If you just start making sure to look at the smaller things, you'll actually start having a lot more appreciation for all parts of life, and not just the good, and remembering the bad and so on. And I think that's really what is important out of this, is to kind of remember that life is a journey, and there's going to be good and bad along the way, but it's really the ride in between that we need to fill up. We can't kind of just go blind-eyed through that, because you will one day be on your deathbed. And you will think back, and you will be, I think one of the biggest things, and if you haven't spent time with someone on their last minutes, days, hours, or whatever at their deathbed, you wouldn't maybe know this, but I have had that honor once before. And I promise you, the one thing that person would like is one more mundane day.
Hey everyone, welcome to the RLT podcast, where we share some real life tools, tips, and tricks to help you not only discover, but also reach your ultimate goals. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Real Life Tips podcast. This is episode number 59. I'm your host, Mono.
You're joined by Leon as usual. Grab a coffee, grab a seat, get comfortable, and get ready to spend this 30 minutes with us. That's if we stick to the time this time. How are you doing, Marnu? It's been crazy this side. I think you can hear exhaustion in my voice. I mean, it's almost the end of the week and I'm knackered, man.
Same, man. Like, I think it's been one of those weeks, and no matter what I try and do, I can't stick to my sleep schedule. And when I try, I actually wake up every couple of hours, and we've spoken about insomnia before, and it really sucks, man. Like, I've really been experiencing it lately, and I don't know if it's just the stress. It's been a crazy week.
It sneaks up on you, hey? It's one of those things. I've had years and years of good sleep, and I don't have insomnia at the moment, but I did go through a stage where I just suffered from insomnia, and I couldn't figure it out. It's not like I feel awake at that time, you know. It's like you literally just can't fall asleep. You're lying there dead tired, but you can't actually get your eyes to close out. So it sucks, man. I feel for you. But yeah, we're going to push through. We have to troop through. There's another couple of days left to the week. Then it's going to be weekend.
Yeah. Can't wait
and
already.
as usual, we need to get this episode ready. And we've got another really great topic for you. I think you're the master of leading us into the conversation. So what are we going to tackle this week?
Yeah, this week we're going to talk about the daily grind, and it's actually quite funny because, you know, we just touched on you being exhausted and, you know, all of the stress keeping you up at night and all that, right? So we're not going to be talking about insomnia per se, but what we're going to be talking about is really starting to appreciate the daily grind, because I think that a lot of times in our lives, we go through these moments, right? And all we try and do is just push through them until we get to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so in the past, we've covered something that was quite interesting, Leon, is when you're obsessed about the future and not having control over the future and how stressful and overwhelming that feeling is. Today, we're taking a different approach, right? Today, we're saying, forget about the future and all that. Think about today, and how do you appreciate today, even if it does get stressful, even if you are tired, even if you are only just barely scraping by and just getting everything done for the day or done for the week or for the month, right? How do you start appreciating that daily grind, and how do you start tapping into another level of consciousness where you don't look back on this day one day and just say, you know what, I wish I did more of this. I wish I did less of that. And I wish I appreciated the actual grind part of my life, right? So that's what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, it's cool. I actually like this. It's for me, it's quite a nostalgic kind of topic. I might actually find myself thinking back a lot. And as you were talking about that then, I'm thinking about my part. I'm thinking about areas in my life that in the moment sucked.
Yeah.
And now when I think back on it, I would really love to go back and spend a day or a week in that time and just reminisce on that time.
Absolutely.
I take particularly, for example, when I was back in varsity days, you know, for a lot of people, it's a grind. It's really tough to kind of focus on firstly being free and away from your parents, but then also surrendering that safety of them. Then it's a very difficult juggle between focusing on work and getting things done and not going out every night partying with your, you know, exploring your freedom and all that kind of stuff. And in the moment there, I just remember us all just complaining about life, like it's so hard. And, you know, we hate this. And, how are we going to get through the studying, and how are we going to do well in our marks and keep our parents happy while doing all of this. And now if I think back, I can even sometimes remember some smells that were in the air and some noises that was around campus, and I think back and I think, wow, that was actually such an awesome and privileged experience, by the way. And at the time, I really didn't appreciate it. I didn't take it all in to the extent that I now kind of almost feel nostalgic, and I kind of miss those days. I really do miss them. And I think that's what this topic is going to be about, is to kind of teach or re-engineer or reprogram ourselves to take the hard days and see that as part of, I almost see like hard days as they're going to stick out in the blur of everything, because you're going to remember the hard days better than the days that just came and went, right?
Yeah.
So don't see them as hard days. Remember them back as those times that you chose to, or that you had to grow, that you were forced into position to grow. And one day you're going to call them the good old days. That's literally what this is going to be about. Yeah,
it is, because if you, and I'm pretty sure that you've gone through this over and over again, not just with me, but so many times that you and I have sat down, we've had a couple of drinks, maybe till late at night or early mornings, right? Just reminiscing about good old times, right? You've told me so many stories.
What are you talking about?
You told me so many stories about the good old days, man. The days that you were in varsity, and
and we complain about the current days.
Well, we do. And
one day these will be the good old days.
And I think this is what I love about today's topic, right? Is because what we're saying is fast forward, do two things. So fast forward a couple of years, a decade or so, and then come back to this moment. Okay. So fast forward, look back at the day, at what you're experiencing in this moment, and then think to yourself, is this going to be called the good old days? And realize that even if you think in that moment that it won't, it will. Yeah. It will always form part of your past, as part of your story, of your growth, of everything. And the first thing that comes to mind for me as well is I also went through, experiences that I still look back on to this day. And I look at them and I think, man, those times were tough. There were times that I was living off of 2-minute noodles, It wasn't a great life. It wasn't everything I wanted it to be. But you know what? Now I look back at how complicated my life has gotten since I've sorted out the food situation in my house and everything.
Ain't that the truth,
and you look back to those days. I wouldn't want to go back to those days. Don't get me wrong. Maybe for a day, maybe for 2 days, just to really breathe in the air around me. Know that don't worry about tomorrow. Everything's gonna be okay, because I turned out great, I think a lot of us, if we look back at the stress that we had growing up, or the stress that we had finding our first job, finding our first car and house and all that kind of stuff, and looking back from that and looking to this point where we are now, I think so much has changed and it's all okay. So there's no point in stressing about it, right? But what I also want to say is that looking back at where you are now, right, or even taking an experience from the past, if you rewind and go back to that time, would you not want to tell yourself, stress less about this, focus more on that, okay? Change this. If you could time travel, and that's what I'm saying, right? If you could time travel, what advice would you give to yourself 5 or 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Would you tell yourself to be more compassionate towards yourself? Appreciate the things that you are doing, right? And not worry about the things that you are not doing, right? And the things that you're still learning, right? Would you tell yourself to risk more? To take on more risks and to just not stress as much? What would you tell yourself? And really bringing it to this day and saying that how can we use all of that to appreciate what we're going through on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's quite funny. I'm going to come up with a really stupid reference now, but I've started watching The Flash on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
I promised myself I would never watch The Flash. And now I'm completely addicted. So
did you do it because of the kids, or did you do it by yourself?
I did it with my boy. He's a superhero fan. So we're watching The Flash, and this dude just figured out that he can kind of, run through time and stuff like that. And in the episode, so you just touched on, would you go with words of encouragement? Would you go and change things? And in the episodes, they kind of go through, and obviously this is all fictional. No one can do this, but I can imagine how that could be. But where you start changing things in history, and then it kind of has a very big adverse effect at the present, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought about this many times in my life. There's been some things in my life. I'm not talking about mistakes. I think the mistakes are there for a reason, and I think they're there to grow you, to make you stronger, and to give you that experience so that you know how to. That's the only reason we know
Absolutely.
why not to touch a hot
100%
plate,
agree.
you know?
Yeah.
But there are definitely times I wish I would have known a little bit better, or been a little bit more emotionally intelligent, especially with regards to personal relationships, and maybe getting my feelings hurt when I shouldn't really have bothered too much. That where I spent a lot of time whimpering around or being down about stupid things in hindsight, you know. But then it again comes back to the argument of, if I now look back on it, if I didn't get those bad experiences, I wouldn't really know how to react to them if they now come across my way.
Absolutely.
So now maybe having had those bad experiences in the past, now when it really counts, when I've got kids and I've got very big responsibilities and stuff. Back then I didn't have much to lose. Now I'm better equipped because of all those crappy experiences. But on the topic also of just kind of rushing, you know, that's the one thing that I've always been terrible at. And I'm constantly wanting to know if it's just my life or is it everyone that's like this. But I'm constantly, and we spoke about this in very recent episodes, where we're trying to climb our Everest the whole time. You know, and I'm very much like that. And I don't really always pay attention to the moment, and especially not the grind. I'm not someone that would say that I enjoy suffering in the grind, in the moment, working through difficult projects at work, or working through difficult stages with your children, or going through hard times with maybe your kids being sick and all of that. Like, it's one of those feelings that just makes your stomach turn. But then I found myself in that moment, or in those moments now, thinking back on them, that, geez, I learned a lot in that moment. And I think character develops every time there's adversity, every time that there's you being pushed to your limits, or you being brought to a new truth, or you know, kind of distorting what you thought was reality. Like, for example, when a kid gets sick, you'll go through 2 weeks of good sleep, nothing's wrong, and you're just coasting through life, and then suddenly your kid has a 39 degrees Celsius temperature.
Yeah.
And it's those kind of things. Thinking about them now still makes my stomach turn, but I wouldn't necessarily say in hindsight it's worth it to kind of rush through those things. Those are all life experiences that kind of forms your character and who you are as a person, and how good you are at handling severe acute stress, like family stress. Absolutely. I'm not talking even about financial stress, but like almost risking life and things around you. So it's a very, very interesting topic in the fact of rushing through difficult parts to get to the nice parts, about trying to kind of not take in the bad parts because you only want to enjoy the good parts. But it's very true what you say in this case, and for this topic, is that the bad parts, when you go back in hindsight, and I talk about all the peaks, for example, in my relationship with my wife. A lot of it is obviously good, but the bad parts will stick out as, that day we had that incredibly big fight, or that fallout, or whatever. But I promise you, if you didn't have those, how can you just go through a relationship without ever having a fight like that, or not having that knowledge of how to react? Exactly.
Yeah, it's impossible. And I'm so glad that you brought that up as well. One of the things that you mentioned, because this whole topic of discussion is not about saying, look at life a different way and all of a sudden we're going to stop messing up. We're still going to mess up. This isn't going to fix anything, right? What we're really saying here, and what it really comes down to, is how do we find appreciation in even the daily mundane kind of stuff, right? Because if I had to look back, Leon, so at the stage where I am now in my life, I don't have kids. I haven't bought a house or anything. I'm not doing anything significant with my life. I'm going to get there. It's something that I'm planning towards and I'm growing towards, right? But I don't want to rush through these years just to say that, my life is so dull and so mundane and all that kind of stuff. Just to get to that next milestone, just to, at the other end of it, look back at these days and say, oh, but you know what? You had no responsibilities. You had so much freedom. You could do so many things with your time and all that. Why didn't you take advantage of those situations? Advantage of those moments,
tell you that
right?
now.
And that's the thing,
I can
right?
tell you that now. Enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. Stopping and saying, let me breathe in the air. Let me appreciate this moment. Maybe you're away on a holiday. Maybe you're sitting next to the beach one afternoon. It's about one thing. Also, understanding that in this moment, I gotta just take a second, breathe in the air around me, and realize that one day I'm gonna look back to this day. And so, what else should I do to enjoy this moment? Maybe I should put my phone down. Maybe I should stop videotaping everything and really just engage with those around me, because this might never happen again. Maybe it's a family setting. So it's about that on the one end, right? It's also about on the other end, realizing that if you look back at this day, at this moment in your life, right, would you have not beaten yourself up so much? Because I do that on an ongoing basis, right? Where I look at myself and I'm like, why can't I be better? Why can't I do more? Why can't I just risk a little bit more? Because I don't really have that much to lose. Maybe I should just, instead of waiting for that day, one day to pop up in my mind and say, and all that regret, just look at this day and say, you know what, I'm going to risk it because I really don't have so much to lose, right? If I do this, or if I do less of that and more of this. And so I think those two things are the main thing that I think comes to mind when we're talking about being able to fast forward, hypothetically look into the future and look back at yourself where you are now, and to find the appreciation in the day job that you have, in the relationship that you have. Maybe it's not going great, but one day you're going to look back and say, you know what? Marriage is so much harder, I wish that I appreciated the little fights a little bit more, and I didn't overthink everything, right? Looking at the family situation that you're currently sitting in as well. So if that's, bad relationships between siblings, if that's bad relationships with your parents, with looking back at those days and saying, you know what, for now, I might have bad relationships, but those people are still around. They're still in my life. There's still time for me to go ahead and fix that, and finding the appreciation throughout the daily grind, not waiting for the daily grind to one day be over and then looking back and saying, oh, I wish I did a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that.
I think it's, I kind of see life as you would see sports or professional sports, It's almost like you spend 99% of your time, or let's say 95% of your time, practicing and exercising and preparing and doing all the nasty stuff, just so that you can get to the Super Bowl and play a final, and get to those very hard moments or those peaks and valleys, and the valleys are many times, you might go through 2 weeks of boredom, so that we don't spend money, for example, but after those 2 weeks, we're going to go away on a nice long weekend to a holiday. And that 2 weeks of not spending money and sitting on our cash so that we've got the finances to get away for that weekend, that is part of it. That is how you are able to get to that weekend or that tip of the iceberg or whatever it might be. And that's what I mean by sports. I think a lot of these professional sports players spend most of their time training. And then a very small minority of their time actually gets spent on the pitch playing the game professionally in front of crowds. And I think life should be done like that. Like what we do mundanely or autopilotly, if that's a word, during the week, during the alone times, during work hours, just sitting here doing emails, whatever it is that you are busy doing. That's all you practicing. It's just, flexing those muscles and building yourself up so that when adversity strikes or good stuff strikes, that you've worked towards that and you are prepared to take that on head on and kind of get through those obstacles. And that's what I see a lot when I think about savoring the moment, as people would say. So kind of taking every day one step at a time kind of mentality. It is quite liberating. I've tried to go through a whole week because, again, I'm a peak and valley kind of person. And I've tried to go through a whole week kind of appreciative and taking in almost like every day's tasks, really doing the whole thing of waking up, gratuity, sitting with myself, thinking about the day, planning out. And I promise you those weeks are way more fulfilled. When you start your day off with, intention, even though it feels like here's another little boring day coming along, going through my emails, doing this, doing that, going through the routine, working through that, getting your lunch, getting your supper, putting the kids to bed, all of that kind of stuff. If you just start making sure to look at the smaller things, you'll actually start having a lot more appreciation for all parts of life, and not just the good, and remembering the bad and so on. And I think that's really what is important out of this, is to kind of remember that life is a journey, and there's going to be good and bad along the way, but it's really the ride in between that we need to fill up. We can't kind of just go blind-eyed through that, because you will one day be on your deathbed. And you will think back, and you will be, I think one of the biggest things, and if you haven't spent time with someone on their last minutes, days, hours, or whatever at their deathbed, you wouldn't maybe know this, but I have had that honor once before. And I promise you, the one thing that person would like is one more mundane day.
Yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a great day.
Yeah.
And it could even be just an hour spent with a lost friend that they never reconciled with. It could be really like you would listen to that and say, listen, you can do without that. They would say, no, I would give anything to just have one day at the office, just literally making coffee with mates. Yeah. And that's the kind of level of appreciation that we at least need to try and fake.
Yeah.
If you can't you know what I mean? Like literally force your mind into growing techniques or creating tools to grip into every day and kind of make it meaningful where it seems like there is no meaning.
Yeah, because I think so many people have gone through, I don't know, maybe you get into an accident or something, you lose a limb, or you all of a sudden you can't walk. The appreciation that you have for just walking to the shop or walking around in the mall, those type of things, right? I think it's so beautiful, Leon, and I think it's time for us to really start focusing on this, because like you said, majority of our lives are spent on autopilot, and we've covered this in the past. I can't remember the statistics, so I'm just going to throw a random one out of here. But let's say 80% of our lives, the things that we do, how we do those are basically, just autopilot things that your brain just tells you got to breathe, you got to
being alive but not living.
Exactly, right? So from time to time, I feel that it's so important for us to pull ourselves out of that when we can and if we can, to just stop, look around, breathe in the fresh air, and then start appreciating the daily grind. So Leon, with that being said, let's head over to the most important part, which is the real life tips.
I even threw in a nice little high-pitched tips in the end there for you.
Yeah, I love it. That almost took twice as long as we usually take on that section.
I know, man. I'm trying to mix it up, and I literally have one beatbox move.
You messed it up that bad. I love it. Well, you nailed it at the end, and you guys in the audience won't know this. We'll keep it in the blooper reel. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we'll do with that. All right, so Leon, we've unpacked quite a bit here today, right? The base topic being, appreciating the daily grind, actually really appreciating the daily grind, not just pushing through it, but looking at it as, from a different perspective, looking at it, fast forwarding, coming back, looking at it and really saying, you know what, even though my days are mundane and boring and, they're really not that exciting, looking at my circumstances, looking at my situation, even though it's not perfect, and really knowing that one day this might be the good old days, or it will be the good old days that you're referring to. When you're telling your kids the story, when you're telling your best friend the story, when you're sitting having drinks with your mom or your dad, and you tell them about the actual grind that you went through to get to the point where you are now, right?
Yep.
But also understanding that even if you could go back, you wouldn't change any of the bad circumstances you were placed in. You wouldn't change any of the bad situations you went through, the mistakes you made, because that formed part of who you are as a person now. It helped you to address those similar situations in a new light with new strength, because you've actually practiced this before. So now that we've covered that, and we've also covered that you don't ever want to look back at this day and think, I should have risked more. I should have done less of this. I should have done more of this. I should have appreciated the moment more when it was there. There's nothing I can do about this now. So now that we've covered all of that, Leon, what is your one tip or two tips that you'll leave with the audience here today? And how can we actually start applying this to our lives starting today or starting tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I've got one strong tip here, and it's something that really helps me a lot. And again, I'm going to be very much focused on the point of savoring the moment, right? And trying to take in everything. So what I've started doing, and I think I've been kind of addicted to this now almost for like 2 years already, and I think you know this about me, but I've started watching a lot of different YouTube channels. I'm not going to cite any channels now because definitely there's so many out there, and I would say preference differs, or, people have different kind of liking in these kind of channels. You can either start searching for nomad lifestyle or van life or simple life. Those are like the three kind of areas, right? And what these people do is they really, really go on simple life journeys. They might even go completely off grid into the woods and start making a life for themselves, literally with like self-made houses, boiling water once again with fire, going back to the basics, right? And some of them live in
Sometimes
vans.
I want to do that.
I know,
I
dude. Just escape it all, eh? Become like your own little cult somewhere in the woods, on some unproclaimed land. But what I really love about these episodes and why I'm so addicted to it is it takes me away from my super complicated life and into a world where some of these people will wake up and talk you through their coffee routine and just kind of how they make the effort to make the best 1 cup of coffee. I smash a button on the machine and I just drink the same bloody coffee every day. These guys will have a little routine. They get it to this level. Then they'll go sit on the porch that they hand built. They'll take in the sun breaking through the trees for the first morning sun. They'll take in how the, kind of dust settles at dusk, and they'll look at how dawn breaks and those kind of things that I don't think I see that ever. And it's a simple life, dude, and I promise you, these people look super happy, and you can just feel the joy that they have. And they don't have Xboxes, they don't have internet. I mean, obviously they run a YouTube channel, so they do have internet, but that's how they kind of make a living for themselves, or enough money to at least put that life together. But they've got a super simple life. So my tip's going to be different this week. Go and try and find a way to get in touch with simplicity. What I like about the simplicity is it shows you in these guys' channels that their appreciation for the small stuff that happens in between, right? Literally the beat of the drum of the day, every moment, how that's important and how they take that in and how they're super aware and they're very, very intentional about every single little thing that they do that day. Yeah. And it's super humbling because I find myself rushing through work day, and if it's a difficult night with the kids, I want to just rush the kids to bed. If it's a good night, great. If not, just get this 3 hours done so they can get in bed. Those guys will literally, and again, I don't know if some of it is faked or whatever because it's in front of cameras, but that's not the point here. They will, for example, when their kids go off the rails, they'll see that as an opportunity to teach them stuff. Yep. I'm constantly under pressure and stuff, so when my kids go off the rail, I just want to, suppress it with force, I don't take the time anymore to kind of sit them down and talk them through and whatever. Yeah, I just think it's a really good help to start looking or finding resources. Maybe it's books. I haven't really found books yet. Just about simplicity and breaking your life back down to its simple forms, the breathing, your inner health, your mental health, the basic components that makes up life. And then you're going to start realizing how freaking fortunate we all are to be here and how humble we should be with regards to all of our good fortune.
Yeah, that is such a good point, Leon, because, and I've heard this somewhere before, I can't remember, I think it might have been in a book, that when in doubt, simplify, or when overwhelmed, simplify. Because the reason that you're overwhelmed or the reason that you're in doubt, it's because things are too complicated. You're complicating it for yourself. You're overthinking it, right? So I love that tip for that reason, right? If you feel like there's just too much going on, you can't find a moment of appreciation, there's not one thing that you can find that you can appreciate in this grind, in this stage, or in this phase of your life, then simplify. Focus on the simpler things in life. I love that. Really, really cool. From my side, I've got 2 tips, but they sort of tie into one another. My very first tip is to zoom out. Really, really, as opposed to being focused on just waking up, getting done what you need to get done, getting through this week, getting to the weekend, right? Is really take a moment, and I want to challenge you to do this because it really, really helps. See your life as a timeline. I do a lot of editing. I do a lot of music stuff and everything as well. So I look at it as a timeline, right? The day you were born, as you grew up, the day you die, and you don't know when that timeline stops, right? But really zoom out and look at the big picture. Because if you think about your life now, if you tell a story about your past and all that, isn't that effectively what you're doing? Is you're zooming out and you're thinking, oh yeah, this was between the ages of 15 to 18 or 15 to 19. True. Those are phases or stages of your life, right? And so I want to challenge you to go out and actually think about your life as you're this whole timeline, and that you're busy living and busy recording as you go along, right? And you can't change the past. You can't change what has already been recorded. The only thing you can do is maybe in the moment, for the future, for what you're about to do next, live it a little bit more intentionally, right? So my challenge is really that, and that's my first tip, is to zoom out, look at your life and look at your current situation, not as a bad situation, not as a bad life, but maybe just as a challenging phase of your life. And so that, I think, changes your perspective of how you live your day-to-day already. As my second tip, I want to challenge you to go and put down your phone. It sounds really weird, right? Because if I had the type of quality phones and cameras and stuff that I have today, 10 years ago, there's so many of my memories that I would have loved to capture, to go and live them back and relive the videos and everything, right? But let's all be honest. No matter how long you keep those things for, if they're in digital form, they go missing. Something happens to them. They get corrupted. They get deleted. They maybe get thrown away, or just something happens to those so-called memories. So I feel that a lot of people are obsessed with their devices, obsessed with capturing the moment, right? The fact of the matter is, when you think back to a good day, a good stage in your life, it might have started off with a good photo that you've printed out and it's stuck on the wall somewhere, or it's pasted in an album or something. That might bring up a lot of feelings and all that. But 90% of you reminiscing about good old times and good old days is just you remembering that moment. You can't explain it to anyone. The smell, the feelings that you felt, and all those things, right? So I want to challenge you to put down the phone, right? Put down the device. If you go out traveling and all that, by all means, go grab, take photos, take videos and all that. But also from time to time, pull yourself out of that. And know that putting down the device and just really experiencing the next 20 to 30 minutes by yourself without needing to record it on any type of device or anything is probably the best gift that you're going to give to yourself and to those around you as well.
I've just on that tip, I've actually missed my daughter winning a 100-meter relay race because I was too focused on getting the video footage
perfect footage, yeah.
So, yeah, exactly.
You do it so many times, yeah, absolutely. So, Leon, I think it has been such a great episode. I think it's so important because we got to start understanding that in our work lives and in our daily grind, right, there are things that we can appreciate. There are, maybe the situation doesn't feel perfect, but there are little things that we can direct our focus to and start focusing on those and doing more of the things that make us happy and doing less of the things that don't make us happy. If that's quitting your job, I'm not telling you to do that, but but it is important to find the things that you love within the daily boringness of this life sometimes, right?
Love that outro.
Absolutely great, Leon. We've got some very, very exciting topics coming up. We might have a couple of guests coming up, secret. So we're not going to tell you who that is or do the big reveal, but you will know when it drops, when the episode comes out. So stay tuned for that. And for now, focus on appreciating the daily grind. Until next time, this is me signing off, Mono.
This was Leon, as usual. Such a pleasure chatting with you, Marno, and hoping to share some love with the people out there. We'll catch you on the flippity next week, same time, same place. Stay safe. Cheers.
Bye. What's up, guys and girls? If you've derived some great value from our show thus far, please take a second to rate and review us on the platform that you're tuned in on. This will really help us to grow the show and reach more and more people, to spread the positivity and change more and more lives. So it will literally just take you a second to rate and review us, and who knows, perhaps you could directly be responsible for changing someone's life today. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Until then, cheers.